Thank you so much for joining us, everyone. I'm going to kick off just with an introduction. Um, so my name is Katie Fowler. I'm the Director of Responsible Business at the Thomson Reuters Foundation, and we're delighted that you could join us today. Thank you so much. And it's an absolute pleasure to introduce our AI governance initiative to you. Thomson Reuters Foundation is the corporate foundation of Thomson Reuters, and we have partnered with UNESCO to deliver an AI governance initiative. Thomson Reuters Foundation is already home to the Workforce Disclosure Initiative, which is a leading corporate voluntary disclosure platform with company data representing $9 trillion of combined market capitalization and 8 million employees in direct operations. And as part of our approach to drive responsible business practices, we're now looking at the way that AI technologies will be deployed in business operations, systems and products, and in turn, how they will impact people and society. What we're aiming to do through our AI governance program is to build the world's largest data set, making it a really key part of the infrastructure for public AI, and we need your help in order to do that. So this is a world-class, first of its kind initiative, which will potentially offer a benchmark for corporate excellence in AI adoption. And the programme seeks to support companies to map their AI adoption across their workflows, their operations, their services, with the long-term goal, of course, of doing no harm. And we have built the survey based on UNESCO's recommendations of the ethics of AI, and it comprises a voluntary survey with added insights and services. And I'm absolutely delighted to be joined by my colleagues today who will take us through this really insightful webinar to really support you in your decision about how you will support AI responsible adoption and in turn corporate transparency on the same. So my colleague Rosie McKenzie, our Senior Company Engagement Manager, is with us. Another colleague of mine, Joe Jang, who is our Senior Research and Sustainability Manager. And I'm also delighted to be joined by Doa Abu Al-Yunez, who is the Programme Specialist at the Ethics of AI team in UNESCO. Additionally, we're also joined by a special guest, Maya Indira Ganesh, who's the Associate Director of Research Partnerships at the Leverhulme Centre for the Future of Intelligence at the University of Cambridge. And we'll also have an opportunity to introduce our data partner, Akash Kapoor, who's the COO of Nossa Data. So our proposed agenda today, we will talk through the current state of responsible AI, some of the key considerations that need to be made around that. We'll look at the insights into the AI governance survey and how it was built. And we'll have an opportunity to introduce our data partner, Nossa Data, and then we'll hear from Maya on the human approach to AI ethics. So just in terms of housekeeping, please do feel free to use the Q&A channel throughout the webinar. We will have a dedicated session for Q&A at the end of the webinar where we'll aim to answer all of your questions, but feel free to post them through at any stage in the proceedings. And I think I'm going to hand over to Rosie.
Thanks, Katie. I think it's actually Joy first. Thank you very much.
Joy.
Of course. Hello, everyone. So I'm gonna take everyone to take a look of current state of responsible AI. So nowadays, AI is no longer a futuristic concept. It's already become like the fundamental driver of business strategy, efficiency, and decision-making. It's already embedded in lots of different applications like the financial investment decision, hiring process, or supply chain management. And the current research shows like the AI market is projected to reach 1.8 trillion by 2030 and growing at like 37% compounded annual growth rate, which is very fast and rapid growth. And AI currently, even though they have like growth a lot, According to PwC most updated CEO survey, around 70% of global executives that express trust concerns about the AI embedding. They cannot like fully trust the AI adoption process, and if AI is like really accurate and ethically to be embedded in the business. Now let's take a look what is the major challenges and concerns of AI adoption and development. So the first one is also like the most commonly talking about one is about bias and fairness. So AI normally they will learn from like the historical data, this training data. So if like the training data implies some like racial bias or gender bias, the AI algorithm will just automatically learn from that and then manifest this bias into like into reality as discrimination. Before, like Amazon was criticized because they're hiring AI to that discriminated against the female, because of like for the training data, like they historically favoring resume with male associated terms. It turns out like they will automatically reject more female candidates. Another major concern is about like data security and privacy risks. Because of like the nature of AI system that will process like a huge amount of data, including lots of personal data, make the AI system easily become a target of cyber attack and misuse. So like when I talk about personal data here, it's not only about like your name, age, like this kind of data, but also including some biometric data like your facial images. So Clearview AI, they have been criticized because of like they collected billions of facial images without the customer consent, leading to a big privacy violation. And this kind of like personal information leaking can cause like further more serious problems like the misinformation. The AI, especially for the generic AI tools, they can fabricate very convincing but false information with like this kind of like personal data and all the other leaking data, that can seriously threatening the public trust, brand reputation, and even for like the geopolitical stability. In 2022, during like the Russian-Ukraine war, the AI generated a deepfake of like Ukraine president urging surrender was circulated a lot during that time. That hugely impacted like the geopolitical stability. So last but not least, the concerns and challenges is about like the labor market disruption. Because of like AI driving automation that is really, really efficient to some extent, many businesses they already adopt AI tools to replace some human labors. We are not saying like it's not okay to do so, but it's more about like how to better upscaling the labor markets and also not using AI to fully like entirely replace the human labor, but more about enhance human productivity. So IBM in 2 years ago in 2023, that has announced that they paused like hiring for 7,800 jobs because AI could automate that, but they just lead to like the big concern criticize is that only the best way to do so instead of like thinking about more using AI to like do more training and also like augment human productivity. So this is like our 4 major challenges we currently consider about how to responsibly using AI. And to address these challenges and risks, transparency and governance, that must be at the core of the AI strategy. One of like real world example is like UK Home Office, which was used to use AI tools for AI application sorting. But in 2020, they stopped to using like AI tools anymore because of a legal challenge. This legal challenge accused the UK Home Office accuse these AI tools contain entrenched racist and bias. Because of like the biased algorithm, they mistakenly deport lots of like non-white applicants. So because of this public trust crisis, nowadays like UK Home Office, they require all the AI tools they're going to use to make any decision has to be published in their methodology on a public register or the repo to enhance accountability and rebuild the trust. Madeline from University of Oxford comment that it's because like the government might well be able to make the case the AI is leading to a better decision making and reduce the unnecessary detention. But without great transparency, we cannot know. Many AI tools in the market that remain like their methodology remain a black box. Because of that, people find it's very hard to trust any AI tools, even if they might accurate, they might not contain any bias. So this is why transparency is so critical, so important. And transparency is not only about the compliance, it's more about like building the confidence, to building the public trust, to ensure like that the AI adoption and AI deployment is like that serves the whole society fairly and also responsibly. So in the next slide, we're gonna explore like the need for the global AI governance data sets that to further enhance like the AI transparency and responsible AI practice. So currently, like there are already lots of like regulation trying to tackle about the AI governance, such as like the EU AI Act or US like the AI executive order. But even though there's lots of regulation, there's still no shared data set to benchmark the AI governance and ethics across the whole across different industries and also different regions. Without like the standardization, the AI accountability and transparency can vary widely, limiting like the effectiveness of the transparency, like of the AI responsibility monitoring. Just like other traditional financial reporting standards that can strengthen the market trust, a transparent AI governance framework can also provide a similar value. This is what like the AI GDI, the AI governance disclosure initiative trying to do. So for this initiative, like my colleagues will introduce more details about how this, how the survey was formed, how the framework was built up. But I will talk a little bit about what we try to use this initiative to tackle it about. So we want to use like this disclosure initiative to build up like structured global AI data set that can be very essential to build like the standardization AI governance assessment across the industries to have the organization evaluate their own responsible AI governance practice. And they can also help the companies to identify the potential algorithm bias at scale before they further do any deployment, ensure like the AI model was tested to fairness and also accountability. It also can strengthen the accountability with the global alignment, because like this initiative is built on like international AI governance standards. It can also make like the AI adoption more easily accessed to the public and also more transparent. Last but not least is like I keep talking about like the rebuild the trust. This initiative, we aim to build the investor and stakeholder trust and confidence in responsible AI to giving people and relevant stakeholders the confidence about like the AI system was developed and also used responsibly. So I'm gonna hand over to my colleague Rosie. She will talk about more practical considerations when responsibly adopt AI.
Thank you, Joy. Yeah, absolutely. So we just want to have a little highlight a few things that really need to be borne in mind when you're thinking about AI and its deployment and development. So firstly, a few things around quantitative monitoring and evaluation. So Joy's already talked about the fact that there have been some issues in training tools and removing bias from them. So that's really, really important. And the fact that if it's not properly trained, it's going to reinforce many different types of bias. And it's really, really key as well to have clear and representative performance indicators and a really effective assessment of compliance rates of all the the relevant frameworks, and also qualitative aspects as well. So it's really key that the individual's perspective is not lost in the development of AI. So it's really important that stakeholder feedback is collected properly, effectively, fairly, and that is really taken into account, along with social impact investments and cultural considerations in different parts of the world. And I'm really sorry, I skipped this bit. There are also some recommendations that we really want people to be thinking about. So it's really key for organizations to establish clear guidelines with effective and efficient monitoring systems that provide really clear levels for accountability throughout the organizations. Then for policymakers, it's really crucial to develop comprehensive frameworks that enable international effective cooperation and that balance, try and strike a really good balance, which is a very difficult process to do between innovation and safety. And then with all of that, as Joyce mentioned, there are various different challenges, but there's also the sheer complexity of the systems. They are inherently complex with significant verification difficulties, and integration to existing processes can be really difficult. So that needs to be considered from the beginning. And then a slightly more sort of from a practical aspect, the cost of implementation can be significant and are going to require really specific and emerging skills to make sure that implementation is done properly. With that, it may mean that any existing resources need to be reallocated elsewhere. So again, the management of that needs to be considered really, really carefully. Lovely. So I'm going to pass over to Doa to talk about the survey itself and the development. So let me get to the right slide. Lovely. Thanks. Over to you, Doa.
Thank you, Rosie. Good afternoon, everyone. Apologies for my almost gone voice. Yes, so to be more concrete, how did we arrive at this survey? So we at UNESCO built on our existing work on the implementation of the recommendation on the ethics of AI, and along kind of around that instrument, we have been working since 2021, since the largest and widest UN instrument on AI has been adopted by the member state. We have been working with different stakeholders, including countries, the private sector, civil society, academia, on different aspects related to the implementation. One of the tools that we developed, for example, that inspired this questionnaire is an ethical impact assessment. I know that there are lots of impact assessment tools out there. So it's a similar format in terms of a questionnaire. So to be concrete, this AI DGI questionnaire, as you can see on the slide, it has kind of three big pillars. So governance oversight. So three big pillars that are then unpacked into more concrete subtopics. So governance and oversight is one. And the human capital is the second one. And safety and security is the third. So just to kind of, what does it mean more concretely? So when it comes to governance and oversight, we have strategic questions, basically. So for example, if the company is involved in the standardization process, or if the company has AI strategy, internal one. And then institutional design, whether there are some mechanisms and structure like an AI ethics officer in the company. And then about the operation, we also ask some questions in that regard, like, do you have a process for impacting ethical or privacy impact assessment, and in what cases? And when it comes to the human capital, the second biggest category, we ask specific questions about the impact on work and skills, what kind of trainings you provide, and reskilling and upskilling, workers' rights and representation, how the tools do not infringe on the workers' rights, for example. And we also ask questions about diversity and inclusion. So if the company, for example, has a diversity committee, safety and security, we have questions about system safety and data safety. So, for example, if you have a policy that govern data sharing between third parties. So, I mean, you can see on the next slide a bit additional example questions to the ones that I mentioned. So, for example, again, on the governance, you can see in the operation, yeah, basically the types of impact assessment that you include. I mean, these are kind of always, we try to make it as easy as possible with having kind of closed questions, yes or no questions, and with a space for you to elaborate more on what's needed. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jo, especially when you don't sound very well at all. So thank you very, very, very much for joining us. Lovely. I'm just going to pass over now to Akash, who, as Katie's mentioned, is from our data partner, Nossa Data. So I'm just going to give you permission to unmute yourself and switch your camera on. Sorry, Akash. You should have it in 1 second. Lovely.
Okay, I think that worked. Can you hear me?
Yeah, perfect. Thanks, Akash.
Perfect. Yeah, thanks for inviting me here today, and it was really interesting hearing everything spoken about before me coming on here. To repeat, my name is Akash. I represent Nossa Data, an ESG reporting software that helps you align and report data across a variety of questionnaires, benchmarks, regulations, and more. In addition to working on the WDI previously with the Thomson Reuters Foundation, we're genuinely very excited to be working on the AI governance survey as well with TRF. So we're really keen to get going in this initiative this year. Since many people on this call maybe have used Nossa Data and or similar services, we're really just keen to get any and all feedback at this time. So if you have suggestions or feedback for what you would like to see in the upcoming cycle, or you just want to get on a call to give any other insights around how we could maybe improve what we're doing, feel free to send me a short message. These are the two mediums here, and we can set something up. With that, thanks, and I'll pass back to Rosie.
Thanks, Akash. Yeah, perfect. Lovely. Okay, so now we're going to pass over to Maya. So I'm going to do the same thing. I give you permission to unmute yourself, Maya. Sorry, 1 second. That should now be working. Perfect. Is that okay, Mag? Are you able? Yeah, lovely.
Can you hear me and see me?
We can hear you and see you. Lovely. Thank you, Maya.
Great, great. Thanks a lot. Okay, well, great. Thanks so much for having me today to be part of this conversation. So as you can see on the slide, I'm Associate Director and Senior Researcher at CFI. And I come to this conversation with 2 hats on. One is that for 3 years, I co-developed and co-ran a master's in AI ethics and society for working professionals who aim to implement ethical practices in their different sectors and industries. So that was the context of my work at the university. And I think we were one of the first courses in this. It was a 2-year-long program. So I'm kind of speaking from the experience of people who are actually trying to do the work of AI ethics in different companies and sectors and industries, so, and not just in big tech, but in a lot of other sectors and industries. So that's one. And the other is, as a researcher who currently I'm working on a pretty big interdisciplinary project looking at public value creation in AI, with AI, and how local authorities in the UK are using this technology, and what can we learn about sort of public administration and the rollout of technology as it really works as it needs to work for people, for citizens. So that's kind of the background to just some of my comments and suggestions right now and sort of thinking about AI governance. So as a result, and just given time and things like that, I'm going to keep things like quite broad and hoping that this sort of inspires people in different sectors and industries to think about what makes sense to them and to go out and look for the kinds of resources you need. So I'd like to think about AI governance and sort of breaking down AI ethics into something you can implement at the level of your organization, but most importantly, your sector and sectoral level, and teams and groups within that. And the reason I like to think about sectors and industries is because AI is sort of, it's kind of obvious now, but we're already working in sectors and industries that have their own laws and regulations. There are legal scholars who will say that, quite provocatively, that you don't actually need an EU AI Act, because a lot of things that are happening across different sectors of implementation of AI are already well regulated within those sectors. And you can think about, financial services, for instance, or health, or journalism, or even like public administration. There are kind of regulatory bodies and mechanisms. So I think that's actually one of the most important things to be thinking about in terms of AI governance. So how does what is your sectoral regulatory history and framework meet sort of the AI technologies that you're using? So that's one. The other is, well, sort of within the company and the organization itself, in terms of who your communities are, who your clients and customers are, and who you have kind of responsibilities to, both inside the organization in terms of your employees, but also externally. And the third is the technology itself. And we really can't see them as sort of separate from each other. So I would definitely recommend the sort of more socio-technical approach, where you look at all of these things moving at the same time. And many people don't like to use a socio-technical approach because it's hard. It's difficult to do it that way. And it's much easier to just focus on the tech and how do we manage the tech. So I would say that, talking about managing the tech, as much as there are particular things you can do to think about governing the tech, these, as I talk about them, you'll realize these are obviously for people to do and for systems to do. Many people want to automate the work of compliance, and I think that can work to an extent, but eventually you do need human oversight in these systems. So there are standards, and now, IEEE standards are quite well known, the Institute for Electronics and Electrical Engineers. Standards are soft, and we only know how robust standards are if people use them and they implement them. There's extremely now very well-known idea of, using model cards that kind of, like nutritional labels on technology. Model cards are, things that developers write for the models and technologies they use, so that you can see what's actually in the system. And that's where it becomes important to look at things like data provenance. And, data is kind of like so central to AI, as I'm sure you know. And so thinking about kind of what data you have and what you need, and bias is kind of well resourced and understood, but I think kind of breaking that down in terms of your audiences, your clients and customers, your organization and your sector. In some places it's quite easy to get data relatively, and in others it's much harder. So kind of what is that data life cycle? And the other way that we have to think about these things is also, many organizations are not developing AI themselves. You're kind of you have an AI supplier. You have a company that is providing you the software, the tools, or the solution. So I think quite often you have to scrutinize those suppliers themselves in terms of what data do they use, and ask them for things like their model cards and what they say about their models. And then you need that resource in-house to be able to even like read that data card. I was just reading today that the company Hugging Face, the tech company Hugging Face, has brought out kind of like an energy scorecard for different models that is showing how different this is, and by which I mean AI models and large generative AI models, the kind of carbon and energy footprint they have. And this is a very new kind of initiative and approach, and this, they're operating in a context in which tech companies are pretty intransparent. So you won't know how these things work till you actually ask for the information. So a lot of it is on you as an organization or within your sector to sort of test the tools and ask and say that, this is working or not working. So it becomes important to sort of look at data, but and how a model is architected, but also things like its outputs. And we are hearing a lot more these days about the energy consumption of models. And finally, I would say that, it's bringing all of these different elements together of ethical and responsible AI and kind of governing AI it's understood to be good business practice. It's really not negotiable in some sectors and industries. But having these sort of cross-sectoral, cross-disciplinary teams who will pull this all together and integrate it into existing workflows and business processes and practices is the really hard piece that I see people talking about, because we've worked in very siloed ways and AI doesn't care about that. And it sort of cuts across many different parts of your business process. So having that sort of internal commitment to say that you want to actually bring all of these tools together, and people and communities together who will make those decisions about governance and accountability, and then actually report on them as well. Because I think the other thing we're seeing is a lot of toolkits and frameworks, but not a lot of good documentation across sectors about what is actually working. Where do some frameworks or toolkits work really well and where do they not? And at the end of the day, I think for the people who are doing this work, another thing I see is that there's kind of a lack of a shared community of practice and networked support. And there's a lot of pressure on people to not talk about what's happening within their companies. And I think that's quite hard for the people who are doing the work of ethical and responsible AI. You do need to share information within your sectors. So sort of even set up the modalities for doing that. Having communities of practice can be quite helpful, because there are so many shifts, and who's helping you, navigate and manage that. So I think I'm going to stop there and hope that that's sort of a useful input into this conversation and thinking about AI governance. I'm super happy to see that, TRF and UNESCO are doing something like this. We really need this kind of data and empirical understanding of the landscape. So thank you very much. I'm going to stop there and happy to take any questions you might have.
Maya, thank you so much. That was really, really interesting and a perfect framing, really, to the initiative that we're trying to drive now. I'm just going to open the floor to any questions at this point. Please feel free to submit them in the Q&A section. We have had one which was already submitted, and I think, Joy, you've managed to answer that directly. We've had I've got a couple of frequently asked questions to run through as well. So there's a few minutes to enter any questions and direct them to any of the panelists if you'd like to. But in the meantime, Rosie, I'd just like to come to you perhaps to answer a question that came in on a previous webinar, which was just from a relatively early business, a sort of startup who was only just really beginning to look at AI tools in their business, and they were wondering whether the AI governance survey, which we're about to launch, is perhaps a step too far for them. Would you like to just respond to that?
Thanks, Katie. Yeah, absolutely. I'm also we just have a little poll as well for people, just to so you can sort of interact as well with us. So I'm just going to launch that, and then I will answer the question as well. Thank you, Katie. So yes, so the framework, the survey is a really, really good framework for all companies. So it is designed to help companies work through where they are with AI deployment and development, and to learn what they need to do next. And what we're really keen to do is give companies some feedback as well on a benchmark of where they are at with their data. So much the same way as with the WDI, for those on the line who take part in that program about workforce management and transparency, we will give a scorecard about how much data the company has in different parts of the survey and how that compares to other peer organizations. So it's a really, really good, the survey is a really good tool at any stage of your AI deployment and development. And so in many ways, the earlier you get started with it, the better your development and deployment of AI is going to be. You do not have to answer every question by any means. Please just have a look at the questions when they're published at the end of the next month, and see which ones you have data for and which ones are most pertinent to you at this stage. Ultimately, obviously, we hope all companies can answer every question, but that is a long way down the line for now. Lovely, thanks, Katie.
No problem. And then just to follow up to that, will the data that any company submit actually be made fully public?
Thanks, Katie. Yeah, so ultimately the companies can choose who the audience is for their answers. They can choose to submit publicly, which means anyone will be able to go on the TRF website and download the company's responses as the company typed it in, which is fantastic. And we would encourage companies to do that as much as possible, as much as they can. The alternative is to submit an answer privately. So that means it won't be available to the public on the website, but it will be available to us for our analysis and insights, and it will be used in aggregate to identify those trends and understand the current sort of landscape of AI deployment and development within the responding companies.
Fantastic, thank you so much. A question has come in on the chat. By any chance, did you do some AI tests with the information disclosed in the WDI, and what were the results? I'm not entirely sure what that question means, but perhaps you do, Rosie.
I can definitely have a go at answering, yes. And if this isn't the question you're actually asking, then please do let us know, the audience member who submitted the question. So for those of you who don't do the WGI, we asked within that survey, we asked for a few questions around how the company is using AI and any changes to contracts that have happened because of AI use. So the number of people who've been redeployed, reskilled, or let go, that kind of thing. Those questions were just for some context, they were introduced in 2023, so they're fairly new, and we don't get much data through those questions in the response data set, because they are quite stretching questions, and they are difficult to answer. So our knowledge of those questions absolutely has fed into this whole process, but they are slightly different lenses, so they're not duplicated. In the WGI AI questions aren't duplicated in the AI governance survey at this stage. I hope that's answered your question. I can see who's asked it, but I don't want to name you just in case other people can't see. But if that hasn't answered the question, please do let me know either here or via email, as we're already in touch. I hope that has answered it. Great. Thanks, Katie.
Okay. If there's no other questions, I think we are going to wrap things up. So just to say thank you so much again to all of our speakers. It was brilliant to hear a bit more about the actual survey itself, but also the broader landscape. Really appreciate it. And to everyone who's joined, really appreciate your time this afternoon. If this webinar was useful and you would like to know more information, please do contact us directly. We would be absolutely delighted to set up a call with you and share some more detailed information about what completing our governance survey will involve when it launches in March. And also there is a company webinar scheduled for March, which again we'll circulate the details for. Please do refer it to any of your colleagues that you think may be interested. We are particularly interested to explore who indeed within companies would be responsible for leading on the responses to a survey such as this, given how unique it is. So if you're asking yourself that question, then that's brilliant, because we also want to know the answer. But all of the ways in which you can sign up to signal your interest in adopting the initiative and also get in touch with us are on the screen now. And yeah, thank you very much again for joining us this afternoon.
Thanks, everybody.